Okay, so yeah, the things that we've done overall then in this series then. So we first off did our character design, where we just sketched out. We did well, the first things to ask ourselves, I think, if you remember, was to have a bit of a thought about what you want your character to be able to do. Are they just running around? Are they a humanoid? Are they going to need animations? Are they going to be able to jump? Is it going to be first person? Is it third person? If it's first person, you've got to think about getting models for those first person views rather than just using your third person model really close to the camera. That's not very often done. Well, I can't quite say that as a true statement, but from my experiences, it doesn't tend to be the way that you make a good first person camera look. You tend to just get these kind of arm models and that'll like float in front of the camera instead. But yeah, you ask yourself all of these questions first, and then once you realize what you kind of want from it, you can go ahead and design your character as well. You can look at certain ability. At this point, the reason we wanted to have a bit of a think about the character before getting started is because that's going to impact how you model it. It's going to impact how much joints you give it. If you're going to want like the head and body parts to turn independently, if you want it to be able to like hold a shield and sword in a good animation, then you're going to need to be able to give them elbows and proper joints, right? Whereas if you just want to attach a shield to a flat arm that doesn't bend and a sword to an arm that doesn't bend, then you don't need to worry about it. So asking these questions first is good.
By the way, I figured it out. So you need to do it in the blueprint.
Oh, I'll bring your screen up.
This is wrong. Okay, here. I added a static mesh under the skeletal mesh.
Okay. Oh, is this for holding things? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then it has a parent socket
yes.
thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And it shows all of the
bones.
bones.
So when you made a socket, your own socket, did that?
So it actually understands all the bones as sockets, so you don't even have to create one.
You just do it at the hand point. I guess you'd make it if it needed to go to a very specific point on the hand, maybe.
Yes.
Rather than where the bones are joined and that. But and Apollyon, yeah, you're right. You definitely can do it, and it's not wrong to do it that way. But you do see it's just a consideration, right? Because if you are going to do it first person, and you do want to have that different model for it. Yeah, so I've seen quite a few. I've seen a couple of games do it, Apollyon, where they have a first person model mesh and a third person mesh existing at the same time. They just they toggle one or the other. So when you press your third button click, instead of just zooming out, it just hides the first person one, shows the third person one.
They even make the third person character only cast shadows and be invisible.
Yeah.
So you see your hands only, or your shadow as well.
And you actually always need the third person thing for if it was a multiplayer game for replicating to other characters as well, so they know how to perceive you. That's how it's done in two of the games I've worked on in work anyway. But that's not saying you have to do it that way, because really if it's a single player game, you can have different considerations, or if your animations and that aren't as detailed, then the first person, second and third person might be overkill. So yeah, fair point, Apollyon. Okay, yeah, go back to that then. So think about your character, think about what you want. We brought up one of the things of if you want different outfits for your characters to wear. Are you going to just do them as textures on top of the model that you're doing, or are you going to maybe do them naked and then you make different you do other bits of models to attach to them? Like Benjo did a great version of this, where he did his man in a blue pants and a cape, but he did it modularly where the hair, the cape, and the pants were all different items that you can then
you need to keep in mind that if you want your clothes to bend like your character, then they should be also following the skeleton.
Yes. Okay, sorry. So if you are going to make clothes, then they need to be basically made on the same rig, almost, is it? Yeah. And when you bring them in, they need to be attached to that same skeletal mesh, so that they move with all the animations in all the same ways, I guess, right? Cool. Yeah, that's a fair point. Okay, so the next thing after that then was actually going on to the modeling. So how we did it, if you're new to the stream and you haven't seen any of this go on so far. So we basically designed our little characters of how we wanted it to look. So just drawing it out. And the idea was to do a side profile and a straight on profile, because then we could import these images into Blender. My mistake, the side profile was good. The straight on one, I put them on a slight angle, which made it a little bit difficult to do a symmetrical mirrored model when I was doing that in Blender. So that was a little mistake we made on the way. That was okay. And we basically then went on and made ourselves a model that kind of looked like this. Blender very quickly. So this. This was the model that we ended up coming up. We spent quite a bit of time modeling, and lots of help from Brainoid, which was really appreciated. You can see this one has got itself a skeleton or a rig as well. But generally speaking, we started just through modeling it out without the meta rig. Going in, using the mirror modifier. We made it all out of one chunk as well, that's another choice that you can make. It's perfectly fine to combine loads of different shapes as well. I think there's some optimization concerns in that, but wait until you understand that, or it's important enough for you to care about, I guess. But yeah, so we made our model. Took quite a bit of time to do that. We then went on and did some of the rigging. So you can see that the bones that we've got in here then. And then that allowed us to go to pose. Go in pose mode. That allowed us to try working out how different poses would look on the character and how the body moves around when you do it. So that led on to weight painting as well. I think there's remember where it is, texture. No, I think is it to select the character body, white paint. Do you remember where?
They select it. Yes, select that one. Sorry, I was looking at the stream.
Yeah. So if
I go, you cannot do it.
No, I just got object edit pose. I'm in modeling though.
Drop down the character body.
Yeah. That's the one. So many little things in here. So we were going to white painting here, and this is where you can select the different bones that you've got. Where are all the bones at? Here is it. Kind of.
You need the bones, the triangle thing on the right side, right?
This.
In the inspector.
Ah, yes, this. There we go, yeah. So you can go through the different bones and see how you can paint onto the mesh then, saying which parts of that body is going to be impacted when that bone moves. So we went through that in order to try and stop the body from jiggling too much. The main thing was the leg animations for us, was that we wanted it when we running. Let's select all and Alt R to reset them. So yeah, when we were trying to run or just move these legs around, it was really dragging the butt around as well. So we had to really get rid of any weighting here associated with these lower bones. We had to also, to stop the front, we added some of these pelvic bones, which are just the kind of placeholders. You can kind of think of it as like sticking a stick through a lump of meat, so that when something else moves far away, this is going to keep this section kind of together, stop it stretching and being pulled too far apart. And we did the same up on the top as well, which helped with it's not even connected, you can see, but it allowed you to make sure that these bits don't stretch so much. Yeah, so we did that. The rig we auto generated with Rigify, and then we built our own one from scratch as well, which was a good experience. Really good experience, actually. I'm glad we did that. We had a quick look at the animation as well. We had a timeline tab, which probably lost somewhere. Animation timeline. There we go. So we looked at trying to make our own animation of flapping some arms around, and then we went up to Mixamo and got some animations since we've made a humanoid. There, look at how we could tweak them, and then we looked at exporting and importing them. In addition to that, we did a little bit of UVing. You could see earlier when we were on the model, you could see the
editing.
Yeah, I'm trying to see it where edit mode of this. Click on this, then into edit. Yeah, so you can see these red lines that we saw earlier. These are like effectively the fold lines in our UV. We ended up auto-generating it, but we did have a look at trying to do some simple shapes and manually setting the scenes and seeing how it creates a UV map for you.
You actually created seams out of islands, then fixed that, right?
Yeah, so we made it auto-generate it. I don't from islands. I'm gonna guess that was the thing we clicked, and then I went through and tried to reduce how many there were, or made them look a little more balanced.
All the different shapes you see in the UV editor are called islands.
Okay. So it's an you can't just like highlight them. I can't remember how you do it.
What do you want to highlight?
This. I just want to like select all. There we go. Sorry. So
Yeah,
I could.
so you see
These are islands. You're saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one cute little archipelago. It's an archipelago. But look at the armpit hair we've got there. But yeah, so we did the unfolding, which is basically what you can see on this left side, but without the colors. It can imagine this was just empty. And then we went on and did some texture painting, which was quite fun. You can actually just draw straight onto things, and then it adds it over onto this UV map. But then you've got to save it as a separate texture. Just a word for a group of islands. So I should have known from Civilization, shouldn't I have? Strat. That was a word I should have known for sure. Okay, so we did that. We exported it then, and then we took it into Unreal. What is this? It's Joe. What's his name again?
Joe Wilkinson.
Joe Wilkinson. Let's see. This is Brainoid's one. So then, yeah, what we did after that was last week we worked on making our own pawn class completely from scratch, so we could try and learn a bit about movement and hooking it up. We imported assets as well, the animations, learning about how when you import a model like that you get the actual static mesh, you get the skeletal mesh with it as well, the elements of how it automatically creates those assets for you, and how you need to link them together essentially when you want a mesh to use that skeleton. We looked at bringing in the animations and how the animations are actually just FBX files as well. They come with the mesh in that, but we're just going to be using the animation data that's associated with them. And then we looked at trying to get our basic pawn class to hook up with that mesh and the animations. So we had to make set up some inputs in our project settings, and then we made our own movement component from scratch. It was just a U actor component in code, and then we made it a movement component through adding the movement input to the pawn, because we made it on a pawn that has that base functionality. That we get, it has a vector basically that it can consume on tick in order to kind of process what inputs it's been given. And on top of that, then we had to make some animation state machines, animation blend spaces as well that we did. So for our running one, go to our meshes, So we looked at we did a 2D animation space here. It could have just been a 1D space to go between idle pose to walking to full blown running at the end as well, which is good. So we had a little look at that. And then in the actual animation instance, which is the kind of the object that controls the animation, and that's kind of what you want to reference to in Blueprint or in CPP as well, in order to manage, if you want to interact with the state machine or give it data or allow the state machine to query things. Is that animation instance that seems to be the thing that we use most. So we can go to the main event graph. It's just like a normal Blueprint. This is where we set up some references, I believe, here to store some things. Because this will oh no, this is an update animation, my bad. This is the initial stuff that we had in our initial one, but we don't really need to do that anymore. Actually, no, we may do. So this was setting references, and then this was every time you update the animation, it goes ahead and queries, am I falling? And it gets the velocity. In terms of how often this is called, we didn't quite look into that. But yeah, but then what you have is you have a animation state machine that we made. So it'll by default come into this animation, which is our character walk and run, which will get the speed of our character. We made an animation modifier because our animation was going. The speed we were using was making the animation go instantly to its like full run pelt immediately. So we kind of just toned it down a bit with that. So this is how we control that, and this is just using that blend space that we made. You can see it's passing in the value of that to give us the to give us what value along here that we should be passing in. So initially, most of the time, it would just end up there. So we're timesing it by 0.15 in order to bring it down. So you actually only go up here when you're running full speed. So we did that one for that. And we also set up a jump one. And this just plays the jumping animation. You'd probably want to break it down into a start jump, a falling animation, and then a landing animation. We did it quite simple, but we did discuss how you could break that down a little further. And here is a sign of the transition rules that say, hey, how can it change from this idle walk run into jump? And if you go into this is just reading variables. And this is what I said earlier, that the animation instance is where you'd probably store these variables that govern the flow. And then you can change in your controller. You can either query it from this animation instance and say, hey, get my controller or get my pawn or get my character, tell me what this value is. Or you can maybe do it the other way around in code. You can say, hey, get my animation instance and change this now. So that way you're not polling it constantly. You're just letting the code do it when it needs to do it. So yeah, we looked at that. And then we looked at the differences between just using a normal pawn to do it versus using the character that you can use. And we added a character class by default, but then realized we're going to have to add all of the movement stuff to it, and we'd be repeating a lot of what we did last time. So instead we added the base third person character that comes as one of the starter kind of project files that you can have with Unreal. And we looked at how they set theirs up, and it was really nice to see a lot of it is very, very similar to ours that we did from scratch. And also we then went into the CPP to see, and the blueprints to kind of really follow through what they're doing and how they're utilizing it. And that made us touch upon some of the fields that you get in a character. So let me stop this, go into our character. That this character movement component will have a lot of properties in here that you can just tweak, and then the whole 12,000 line character movement component class will handle these things. So, you know, unless you want really hard specific control over your characters, and the built-in ones that they give you don't work for you, it really is sensible to probably just use what they've got and tweak some of the values. But you'll definitely learn a lot through trying to make your own one. Whether it's that time investment, do you want to invest a few weeks and have a game that works, or do you want to invest a few weeks and understand how character movement works? So yeah, it's one of those cases. But yeah, loads of settings in here you can play around with. We went ahead and done that, and now we have our little character that can move around using the animations that we set up. The jump one doesn't work very nicely. You can see it'll jump and then it does a jump animation in the air. But we're just going to call it a happy kick at the top, at the apex. But you can see it starts to walk and then it starts to run based on the longer we go forward, because that acceleration value, which is part of the character movement component, means that it doesn't reach its full speed for a little bit of time. That's cool, because that's the kind of feeling that we wanted with this this character movement. So yeah, but essentially we are done with that. I thought I'd just give a quick overview of everything we've done. It helps us appreciate we've put a lot of work in the last 4 weeks, and a massive thanks to Brainoid, who has pretty much orchestrated the whole thing and stopped me having to go and research and look at videos often at all on the stream. Yeah, we still did. Brainoid is new to Unreal. Brainoid's been doing Unreal for like a month, and he doesn't exclusively use it. He works in Unity day to day. So yeah.
I think we should talk about what we're gonna do next. The challenge.
That is a good question. I'm gonna just make my characters have a nice hug. Fine. There we go.
Oh no.
Beautiful.